So we have three main periods of prenatal development. The germinal period, which is the first 2 weeks after conception. This period is really classified by very rapid cell division and the beginning of cell differentiation. Then we have the embryonic period, which goes from the 3rd week of pregnancy to the 8th week of pregnancy. This is really when all the body structures start to develop. So they're very basic. They're not, the fetus isn't able to grow or live outside of the body. It's not that well developed, but it becomes pretty basic during that 3rd to 8th week. And then we hit the fetal period, which is the very longest period. It's from the 9th week until birth. The fetus just grows in size, matures in functioning, just really working to be able to survive outside of the body during this time. So during that first 14 days, you develop the placenta. This is the organ that surrounds the developing embryo. It's attached to the wall of the uterus. It helps sustain life via the umbilical cord, which the umbilical cord really nourishes the organism that is growing into a baby, and carries waste products away. So it really just kind of keeps clean, helps sustain life, make sure you get the nutrition that you need to grow. And then implantation, which happens about 10 days after conception. This is just when the developing organism burrows into the placenta that lines the uterus. So this is the original zygote as it divides into 2 cells, 4 cells, and 8 cells. That's A, B, and C. Occasionally at this early stage, the cells separate completely, forming the beginning of monozygotic twins, quadruplets, or octuplets. Can you even imagine? So the embryonic period from the 3rd to the 8th week after conception, this really begins when the primitive streak appears down the middle of the cell mass. At 4 weeks past conception, the embryo is only about 1/8 of an inch long, but already the head has started to take shape. By 7 weeks, the organism is somewhat less than an inch long. The eyes, nose, the digestive system, and even the first stage of finger and toe formation can be seen. And the 4 weeks, that's image A, and then 7 weeks, that's image B. So then the fetal period, the longest period, so from about the 9th week until birth, the heartbeat is detectable via stethoscope. The cortex is not fully mature at birth, so your prefrontal lobes. Interestingly, and we'll certainly talk about it throughout the chapters, your prefrontal cortex is not fully developed until they're thinking maybe late 20s at this point. But as we learn more and develop more information about that, they kind of keep pushing the time back. So it's interesting to see how we grow, even outside of the fetus here. Chances of survival with the baby increases each day after the 22-week mark. The fetus at 25 weeks post-conception is typically viable, and that certainly has improved with advanced medical care and things, but it's really tricky. At full term, we're looking at 38 weeks. The weight gain that the baby develops between this time means that their limbs are folded close to the body. The uterus is almost completely full. An odd number of chromosomes is correlated with the advanced age in parents. So the older the parents are, the more likely they are to have an odd number of chromosomes. Everyone is a carrier of genes or alleles that could produce serious diseases or handicaps in the next generation. It's also likely that common complex disorders arise from an accumulation of genetic defects in many genes. There are a million different types of recessive disorders. Most of them are not lethal. Lethal conditions are quite rare. Sickle cell trait offers some protection against malaria. African carriers are more likely than non-carriers to survive from sickle cell. Cystic fibrosis, more common among people with Northern European ancestors. Carriers have been protected against cholera, which I don't think is really an issue anymore, but who knows in this day and age. Genetic counseling is also an option for prospective parents to understand their genetic risks before conceiving. I've also heard you can now have like a designer baby who doesn't have any genetic markers for any disease. They can filter those kind of things out. So there's a lot of really interesting things kind of coming down the pike with regards to genetics.